All right. Why don't we go ahead and call to order the June 19th meeting of the Board of Harbor Commissioners.
Frank Kelly.
Here.
Will Anakushin. Here. Betsy Kramer. Here. Charles Watson.
Here.
Ken Owen.
Here. Mr. Bridley, do we have any changes to the agenda?
We have no changes this evening.
Okay, at this time we would take public comment on anything that is not already on the published agenda. There are no public commenters coming up.
Mr. Chair, I've been requested by a slip holder to present what she feels, and I agree, is a safety issue.
Okay.
And so if it's appropriate, I will
do that.
Speak to that.
Okay.
Okay. We've had a number of drowning deaths of people falling off of the slips, the docks in the harbor and being unable to get aboard. And so she was, her question to me was, what are we doing to make it possible for people to get out of the water after they've fallen off their boat or off the dock into the water onto a dock that's difficult to climb up on once you're inside the water or under the water or whatever. So anyway, I am bringing that up at her request and asking that the staff look into perhaps improving that safety condition.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, as you know, after I think the most recent drowning at the harbor, we had a discussion of this item and staff did do some evaluation of that. So what I'd like to do is put it on the agenda and bring it back to you as part of a report.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bridley. If there are no other comments on that point, we'll go on to the approval of the minutes.
I move approval.
Is there a second? All right. If there's no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes. Director's report.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, I'll be brief this evening in that Mick is on vacation, so I'm going to fill in for him on his items tonight. Relative to the department update, just 3 items that have gone on to City Council since we've last met. The Voyage Partner Agreement, lease agreement for the 4B Entai area has now been approved by the City Council, and Scott's finalizing the insurance provisions for that. We've also taken our annual agreement involving the Metropolitan Transit District Wharf Woody contract, the shuttle services on and off of the wharf into the surrounding parking lots onto council. That's a contract amount for just over $30,000, and the Wharf Merchants Association also shares in that expense. And the last item, which actually has not come before you previously, is a resolution which authorizes the finance director to submit an application to the state of California for our integrated waste management grant funds. And annually we've been receiving this, but this is the first year that the City Council and the Public Works Department has decided that the Waterfront Department will basically be the recipient of the total amount of funds for $23,549. This funding provides us with grant funds that allow us to purchase the bilge pad that are used by many boaters in the harbor, and this is the amount that we will use to contract and continue to provide those going forward. So we thought we'd include that so you know that that program will continue. And the last item in the director's report is just our tentative agenda items for next month, our July commission meeting. We're hopeful to have a lease agreement with the Santa Barbara Sailing Club. We're working on the Minnow Cafe lease agreement. Hopefully we'll have that ready for July. A lease agreement with Dennis Longenberger, which Scott will update you on, involving the yacht sales in the 125 building. And then as we do each July, it would be time and appropriate to have the commission consider electing the chair and vice chair for the upcoming year from July to July. So that's the tentative agenda items for next month, and I would answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Are there any questions from the commission for John? It's so thorough. We're stunned into silence. I think we go then to the business services report.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Starting off with the harbor laundry facility. The harbor master plan identified a laundry facility in the harbor as a desired amenity. The department issued a request for proposal for the laundry facility located in the Marina 4 restroom building. The RFP was awarded to Chamley's Commercial Repair, and a 10-year lease was negotiated for the laundry facility. The rent is currently $360 per month. The laundry room opened for business in 2000 with 6 commercial-grade washing machines and 4 dryers. Unfortunately, Chamley's Commercial Repair has failed to operate the laundry room in what staff's opinion is a satisfactory manner. We received many complaints, including problems with failure to respond to customers' complaints about losing money in the money changer, losing money in the machines themselves, slow response to repair inoperable machines, no hot water, lack of cleanliness of the facility, and so forth. Unfortunately, again, the operator rarely responds to calls for service from the waterfront department. And it's a common misconception that this is a city facility, so people don't understand that it's not a waterfront department, that it's actually a contractor. It's a contractor that runs it. The lease expires on November 30th of this year, and the operator's been put on notice that the lease will not be renewed. And Chamley's Commercial Repair has not responded to that notice of non-renewal. Several parties have expressed interest in operating the laundry room, and staff is currently researching alternatives, including issuing a new RFP for a new operator to manage it lock, stock, and barrel, or another alternative would be leasing the equipment from a laundry machine company that does these kinds of things and operating the facility in-house. Moving on, in terms of the lease status for Sunset Kid yacht sales, negotiations with Dennis Longaberger are ongoing. Staff met with Mr. Longaberger on June 10th to discuss the current lease proposal to add Suite 24 in the Marine Center building to his yacht sales operation. We've reached agreement on some of the basic terms of such a lease, including a 5-year lease with 1 5-year option to extend, which was identical what was awarded to Seacoast Yacht Sales some years ago and subsequently to Chandler Yacht Sales, at a base rent of $512 per month, which equates to $2.17 a square foot, an additional utility surcharge of 15 cents a square foot, and a percentage rent of 10.5% of boat sales commissions and 1.05% of new and used boat sales, which is identical to his current lease and the other brokers in the building. And of course, the base rent is subject to a cost of living increase based on the Consumer Price Index. The permitted uses include office space for a full-service yacht sales and brokerage business. Additionally, Mr. Longaberger has requested some other permitted uses, including ticket sales for so-called mega yacht charters. These would be high-end yachts chartered in the Caribbean and the Mediterranean and other exotic locales, and also sales of fractional boat ownership, which was a new term for me, which is essentially a timeshare arrangement for a yacht. We had another meeting with Mr. Longaberger today, and we anticipate we'll have a signed lease for the commission consideration next month. And that's all I have for the business services report this month, in case there are any questions.
Thank you, Scott. There is a request to speak from Gary. Why don't we get his comments, and then we'll have discussion.
Mr. Chair, Harbor Commissioners, City staff, I'd like to thank Scott for, one, listening to people. When they have an issue, they come to Scott. He makes note of it. As for the last 2 years, the laundry facility is just, is gone. He's become like a slumlord. And it's been a recurring problem where people can't get their money back. His name gets taken off of there so he doesn't have to answer any complaints. There's been an issue with hot water. Work Inc. We've got our own Work Inc. going in there to clean it because he never cleans it. So I'm glad to see that Scott is right on top of it, as always, that the lease will not be renewed and that they can look at other options. So I'm glad to see that, and I think everybody else in the harbor will be applauding the fact that there's going to be a change of ownership. So thank you, and good job, Scott.
All right, let's see. I think Commissioner Owen had his hand on the button first.
Very observant. Thank you. Well deserved, Scott. You do. You're very responsive to people. So my landlord leases machines in our apartment building. You just described the situation in my apartment building. They break down all the time. You call, they never get fixed. You never get your money back. It drives me crazy. I'd like to make sure you don't lease those machines. It's a big company that services a lot of buildings. So I'd be very interested if you could send me the list ultimately. I don't know if we need a committee or anything like that of who you're considering, just so I can say, oh, God, don't pick them, because they won't be any better.
Commissioner Kramer.
I'm concerned about what's going to happen this summer. November is a long time away. Who's going to be taking care of it this summer?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Kramer, that remains to be seen. We haven't heard from CCR, so the machines are still in their semi-operable condition. So far, they're still operable, so hopefully he'll keep running them through the summer. And if he notifies us he's going to ask for an early termination and pull his equipment out of there, then we will expedite the RFP process and try and get somebody in there as soon as we possibly can.
Thank you. I also had another question about the basically the timeshares and the yacht leasing. Is that a standard practice? Has that been done in other harbors? I've never heard of it also.
I've never heard of it either. I believe it is a new emerging trend in the yacht sales business.
Thanks.
All right. Are there any further questions or comments? Commissioner Watson.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like a clarification on the percent rent. It's 10.5% of boat sales commissions, and then is it plus 1% of new and used boat sales?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Watson, it's either or, it's not both. Typically, Mr. Longaberger, as well as Seacoast Yacht Sales, they simply report their sales commissions on the boats.
Okay.
I guess the question that Charlie's asking is, how do you know which one you're using, the 10.5 or the 1.05? Or is that just a typo?
No, that's not a typo. That's how the leases are written. The income that comes into that goes into the broker's trust account is the commission, and we get 10.5% of his commission. And that's typically 10% of the boat sale, sometimes less.
I guess I'm still confused. You said either or, but not both?
I'm confused too, Charlie.
All right, and I apologize for the confusion. 10% of a commission is equivalent to 1% of a new or used boat sale.
But we don't charge both. We charge either one or the other.
Either one or the other, correct.
Okay. And do we know which one we're charging, or does it matter? Sorry to be beating this little point, but it's interesting.
In the case of Seacoast Yacht Sales and Sunset Kid Yacht Sales, it's always 10.5% of the commission.
Okay. Any additional questions for Mr. Reedman? All right. I would make a comment, and I hope that we seriously look at if we have a Work Inc. that can keep the facility clean and we can reasonably lease the machines, it might make sense for the waterfront department to take charge of its own laundry facility. I mean, that might end up being a revenue stream for us, God forbid. Okay, Harbor Operations Report.
Mr. Chair, filling in for Mick this month. Just a couple items that he was going to report on. As you know, the Nautical Harbor Swap Meet took place, and this year we had a little different aspect of that in that we also allowed boat owners to turn in any hazardous materials out of their dock boxes or from their boats. And that was held on Saturday, May 17th. We believe it was very successful. It's an ongoing or an annual thing that we've considered. We did not have one last year, but with all the comments and participation this year, we think we'll go back to reinstituting this to have it on an annual basis. We do this in partnership with the Harbor Merchants Association, which also feels it's a benefit because it not only brings the boaters, but it brings hundreds of other people to the harbor on that day to participate in the swap meet. We had 38 different vendors this year, which was a very good turnout. We had, as I said, hundreds of buyers or window shoppers that were checking out what people had for sale, and we had a variety of things, everything from outboard motors, kayaks, to little nuts and bolts and screws and things that people are always looking for. So it was pretty interesting. The hazmat portion of the event was what we would also say very successful. We had over 300 gallons of either paint thinners, acids, gasoline, you name it, batteries that were turned in and were properly disposed of by Black Gold Industry, which also serviced our harbor with our used waste oil. So we'll plan that again, and I think we'll be considering the same hazmat format as we did this year again next year. If you have not been to the Harbor Master's office, I'd like to point out that we have a new feature in a weather kiosk, a touchscreen weather kiosk has been installed. It's right outside the public counter just as you enter the Harbor Master's office. It provides both marine weather information directly from NOAA, and it also allows you via the touchscreen to get a lot of different information about the Channel Islands, in that this kiosk was contributed or was provided by the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary Program. We're very happy to have it. It's available basically whenever the Harbor Patrol office is open, which is for the most part 24/7, unless patrol is out late in the night or the evening. So we would just encourage people to know that it's there. I think Mick's planning on doing a little note in the upcoming dock lines. And of course, we've had many visitors already to the office that are exploring what's available on it. And the last item, hard to believe, but the 4th of July is around the corner. So our 4th of July celebration involving the fireworks program is currently being planned. It will occur, as you recall, this year, 4th of July is on a Friday, which always makes it a little challenging for us in that people become a little more festive. The fireworks have actually been pushed back to 9:30. We've had a lot of requests over the years to move that a little bit later, a little bit darker, get started when truly nighttime has arrived. We've also been told that the fireworks display will be about 22 minutes long this year, which is one of the longer, or if not the longest, fireworks display that we've had. And we will also have the vendors on Cabrillo Boulevard that typically are there throughout the day, starting around noon. And Sparkle will host a live jazz band performance on West Beach, as they have participated annually in the fireworks program. So that's the harbor operations report for this month, and I would be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Are there any questions or comments on this part of the report? Very good. Why don't we slide off to the new business?
Special event camping permit, Catamaran Regatta. Recommendation that Harbor Commission review and consider a request for a special permit to allow event participant camping in the Harbor West parking lot from 5 p.m. Friday, August 15th until 5 p.m. Sunday, August 17th during the 2008 Wine and Roses Charity Regatta. And B, approve event chairman Steve Leo's request for participant camping for the upcoming sailing events as allowed per the Santa Barbara Municipal Code 15.16.090.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the Wine and Roses Charity Regatta is sponsored by Santa Barbara Yacht Club, or hosted again by the Santa Barbara Yacht Club, and it will take place on Ledbetter Beach August 16th and 17th. Again, the event organizers plan to rent the east half of the Harbor West parking lot for both Saturday and Sunday during the event for a flat rate of $700 per day, or the normal rate of $7 a space times 100 spaces. This is to assist the campers or the participants to stay overnight in their vehicles, to guard their boats. Although generally it's against the municipal code to camp in public places, the Harbor Commission does have the authority under the municipal code to approve camping within the waterfront's jurisdiction. And this camping request is for a 48-hour period from 5 p.m. Friday, August 15th to 5 p.m. Sunday, August 17th. The catamaran races are an ocean-dependent use, and waterfront staff recommends approving the special event camping permits for these events. And overall, the event is managed by the Parks and Recreation Department. Our waterfront involvement is strictly with the parking lot arrangements. The events have been well managed under the organizer Steve Leo, and the Harbor Commission has approved the special event camping permit for this regatta since 1998. And that concludes my report, unless there are any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Reedman. Are there any questions for Scott on this proposal? One comment. Turn myself off there. One comment I would ask, and that is, have we ever had, I know we've approved this for many years now, any comments about having difficulty finding parking during the regatta, since we're using a portion of the lot, or is that not really an issue?
Mr. Chair, I don't believe it's a major issue. You know, on a peak weekend in August, we always have some issues with parking, but there's parking available across the street at the La Playa lots. In past years, this regatta took the entire Harbor West lot, and we did get some complaints when they rented the entire lot and didn't utilize the entire lot. So for the last 2 or 3 years, they've shrunk it down and they only use half the lot. So
Okay.
I think that's an improvement there.
All right. Very good. If there are no further comments or questions, this does have a motion attached to it. Anybody
I'll
want?
move to approve staff's recommendation.
Is there a second? Will is seconding that. Any comments or discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Now we're to the lottery drawing for 20-foot slips.
Recommendation that Harbor Commission, via the chair, conduct a lottery drawing to rank prospective slip permittees for 4 available 20-foot slip permits in Santa Barbara Harbor.
Mr. Chair, as you are aware, several months ago we came before you and asked that you consider a process by which we would be able to assign some 20-foot slips. We have tried for about the past 3 years to assign these off of the slip waiting list process and have been unsuccessful. Currently we have 4 20-foot slip permits to offer. And with your support, we were able to go on to the City Council and have them adopt the necessary policy changes that would allow a lottery for the available 20-foot slip permits. So on May 7th and 14th, the Council adopted that resolution that enabled us to proceed this evening. Just like to point out that we did do a fair amount of advertising of this item, both in the Santa Barbara News Press and the Daily sound, and we posted the item throughout the Marina Information Board's Harbor Master's office. And as you know, we also had a list of folks that had expressed some interest in this, and we obviously notified them of this process. The process involved having interested parties come in, individuals that would want to participate, fill out that participation request form, and from that we have developed a list of individuals that will be participating tonight in that lottery process. The deadline was June 4th. We did receive 64 total, but one has dropped out, so we will be drawing a total of 63 numbers, which are equated to names who are participating. So staff would ask that you draw all of the names. In this case, you're going to be drawing the numbers, and we'll assign the name to that. And then after that, we will offer to the top 4 individuals ranked an opportunity to accept the offer. They'll have 30 days to do that. If for some reason they would not, we would go to the next person on the list. After this process concluded, after all the 20-foot slip permits are assigned and the vessels have occupied the slips, we will discard this list in that this is a one-time lottery. It is not a slip waiting list for 20-foot slips. So I just want to make that clear because there was some question about that. So with that, I think we're about ready to begin the process. We provided you the handy-dandy clear picture that has all of the tickets in it with the numbers on them. As you draw them, a combination of your commissioners, Owen and Betsy Ken and Betsy will help us out by recording it, and the same will be true for Carl and Mick or Scott and myself to make sure we get it right.
Ah, the excitement of it. We're shaking them up. So the one that withdrew, is it on the list or has it already been removed from the list?
It has been removed from the list, so you have a total of 63.
The excitement of it. I'm only going to read the last 3 numbers because the first 3 are always the same. 136.
Matt Kilrain.
090.
090 is Brent Mark. M-A-R-K.
116.
Gavin Kleinman.
Sorry, I won't shake when you're reading names.
Oh, I know. I'm so great with people's names.
138.
Last name Esperanza. Aracela. Something like that. Ooh. 4?
105.
Yep. Joe and Alexander. That's 5.
103.
Ben Wolf III. 6.
111.
Elizabeth Benjamin.
117.
Renee Frog. 8.
145.
Lindsay McGee.
I know, but we're going to draw all the names just in case we have difficulty. 108.
Stephen Carlson.
095.
Jim Ebling.
131.
Stephen Anderson.
110.
Michael Daigle.
100.
Nick Guy Robinson. 14.
099.
Yolanda Vox.
088.
Alexandra Pierce.
097.
Andrea Labbe. Labbe. Sorry if I mangled that.
If you have paint that you need to watch drying, this is a good time.
Yeah, exactly.
137.
This will be a hit on the internet. I'm sure it'll be on YouTube. It's Andre Tolan. We have 218, are we?
101.
Robert Whiteman. 19.
091.
And Mr. Chair, just so everybody knows, the reason we're going to draw them all is in fairness to show that all of the names were in that
In here.
clear little bucket. I apologize for the length of the process, but
It's all right.
I just want to make sure everybody understands that.
Goes with the job.
091 is Linda Rudstrom. Rudstrom. That's 20. Okay. Rudstrom. R-U-D, sorry. 20.
123.
Thomas Lewis. 21, are we?
130.
Thomas Lewis, 123. And 20 was Rudstrom.
Yeah, 20
Where's the?
20 was Rudstrom.
Okay. We're good?
130.
Ed Atlasay, Attlesey. 130 is 22.
089.
Timothy Burgess. Burgess. Mangle, 23. Okay.
096.
Bruce Lyon. 24. Okay.
141.
Harry Atterbury.
119.
Mary Miller. Where are we? 26.
125.
Robert Bistagne. Bistagne. And that's 27. Okay.
122.
Clint Lewis. 28.
094.
Marcus Abundis. 29.
086.
Frank Dorenkamp. We're at 30. You have him?
106.
Thomas Tees.
109.
Last name is Pinho. 2.
$114.
Jeff Tony.
126.
Tom Frisina. Frisina. 34.
132.
Ellie Fisher. Fischer.
118.
John Nigen. Nguyen.
121.
David Anderson. Some are easier than others.
143.
Joanne Bowen. Bowen.
129.
Richard Lamberect. 39.
134.
Julie DeAngelis. 40.
148.
Dexter Matthias. 41.
113.
Jane Aversa. Aversa.
104.
T. Dion Warren.
127.
Most amazing thing is Charlie and Frank, these two guys are following along. That's the part that amazes me. Tom Talbert.
128.
Rachel Dudzik.
144.
Robert Tellefson, Tellefson. 46.
149.
Valentino, I'll spell it. It's Butttarazzi. That's already 47. Okay.
093.
Mark Welton, Welton.
139.
Shirley Reed,
140.
Philip Ferrante, Ferrante. 50 now.
102.
Jeffrey Barteet, 51.
133.
David Phillips,
120.
Louis Rasso,
124.
Ken Foraker, Foraker.
098.
Peter Keyes, Keyes.
107.
Royce Stauffer,
146.
Scott O'Brien,
135.
William Ross,
087.
Gregory Weil, Weil.
142.
Matthew Oliver,
147.
James Smith,
092.
Chris Gambler,
B15. No, I'm kidding. 112.
bingo. Yeah, 112 is
Why
Linda
not?
Fuller. Linda Fuller.
And you have to take your winnings down to City Hall to turn in that card and collect. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, she's off the list.
Okay, so those are crossed off. Right. Okay.
All right. That concludes the drawing.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate both your assistance and your patience with that process. But I think it is important. We've struggled with what is the best way to do this. Certainly staff could do this, back at the office, but then there would be questions about the fairness of it or the appropriateness of having it done that way. So I think we endured about 25 minutes worth of effort there. But again, I thank you. The top four will be notified, and then If for some reason they are not able to prove up and are not interested, we'll move further down the list. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. I'm excited to see that there are that many people that are interested to step forward. Since the waiting list went dry, that's a very long list. So we should have those 4 slips taken care of. That seems like it will move us now to item number 7, the municipal code.
Recommendation that Harbor Commission A, receive and consider a staff report describing proposed amendments to Title 17 of the Santa Barbara Municipal Code, and B, recommend to City Council adoption of an ordinance incorporating proposed amendments to Title 17 of the Santa Barbara Municipal Code.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, as we annually do, we take a look at the municipal code and review it to make sure that how we are currently operating, the procedures, the policies, the practices that we deal with on an ongoing basis are consistent with what's in the municipal code. And as much as you'd think we should have that right each and every year, there are either some more major items that need to be tweaked, and there are some minor items that need to be addressed. MIC, together with our Marina Operations Division and the City Attorney's Office, really strive to make sure that the municipal code is very clear as to how we operate. We will either add things, we will delete things, or we will amend them, and we will show those changes. Attached to your staff report is the work that we're currently proceeding with. We felt it's appropriate, obviously, to come to you and review those changes. There are 3 what we call substantive issues that I will discuss tonight that are in the staff report. There are 3 that we think are fairly minor, and I will not address those, but I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have. So the first item that we feel is important, not only to make a change to the municipal code, but probably point out the concern that we have. 1712-170 of the municipal code is a section that's called power-driven vessels, and what we're going to add is sail vessels in swim areas. Each year, as you know, we put up regulatory buoys that allow people to swim off of our beaches safely, and we have those at Ledbetter, East Beach, and West Beach, and they are designed primarily for protecting swimmers. Currently, the municipal code precludes motor vessels from operating within those buoy area or those buoyed off areas. Staff proposes to make changes to also prohibit sail vessels. Last year, as part of Wet Wednesday, we had a very close call where a sailing vessel actually ventured into that area, and albeit that the municipal code didn't address it, we feel it's appropriate that probably all vessels should not be operating within those swim buoyed areas. Obviously, a sailboat could have been under power at the same time. So the change really is to prohibit vessels from operating within these buoyed off areas. We are, however, creating an exception or an allowance for the waterfront director to authorize some vessel activity inside those swim buoys, and the best example that we could show is that the Seashell Association sails directly off of West Beach. A lot of those are novice sailors, beginning sailors, and they learn literally from pushing off from the beach. And on West Beach we have a swim buoy area, and they would on occasion, as part of their Getting Started program, operate in that. So we will have a discussion with them about the novices obviously quickly learning and getting out into the non-swim buoyed area as soon as possible. So that's the first substantive change that we're considering. The next section of the Municipal Code, 1720-005, Section K is called our slip assignment policy, and it deals with appeals typically involving slip terminations. A few years ago, we had in the municipal code an allowance that provided a slip permittee the opportunity to seek a waiver from the director prior to any final action by the Harbor Commission, should that individual have his or her slip terminated and wish to appeal it onto the Harbor Commission. Prior to that time, they could come to the waterfront director and plead what was called undue hardship for that termination. As part of that change, as part of a change during that year, we took that language out, and at that time we considered 3 reasons why we didn't feel that was appropriate. One, that the waterfront director, myself, is typically very involved, if not intimate, in a termination of a slip permit before it occurs, and if that termination takes place, what would be the likelihood of the director reversing that position? The city attorney thought it was duplicative. A waiver request constituted maybe some time-consuming intermediary step prior to going to the Harbor Commission for their final appeal. And then also the word undue hardship was, in their opinion, somewhat vague, and we still feel that to be the case. So what we are going to do, though, is reinstitute the ability for a slip permittee to come to the director after a termination letter has been issued and provide some grounds for why that termination should not take place. Then I would be in a position, together with our staff, to administratively review those facts or circumstances that have come to light after the termination letter has been sent. And if for some reason I feel it appropriate, we could reinstitute the slip permit prior to any necessary going forward to the commission in a final appeal. There will be, again, language change, but we feel appropriate that situation be allowed for slip permittees. And then the last item is Section 220, thank you, which deals with impound and relocation of vessels. On occasion, boaters do dock within the harbor either without permission, haven't been provided a visitor slip, or they're accruing berthing fees and either refuse to pay or refuse to leave. And then we also have a 28-day limit. As you know, no visitor can stay beyond 28 days unless we have small craft advisories up. And so what we've got is a situation where under that provision that sometimes we cannot impound the vessel. In other words, the individual continues to enjoy the benefit of the vessel berthed in our harbor, and we've not really been able to prevent them from utilizing the vessel. So what this would do, the current language only allows for removal of vessels in which fees were not paid. In the case of somebody just simply refusing to leave, it would give us the authority to impound that vessel until they either pay the fees or deal with what berthing or mooring requirements that we have set forth. We believe this impound would also, which I think is really the important part, is deny them access to the vessel until those payments are made. A lot of times we'll get people that just refuse to pay, refuse to move, refuse to do anything. Not a lot of times. On occasion we get those situations, and by adding the impound language, we believe we will get their attention much sooner than we have in the past. So that would be the change under that section of the municipal code. And then, as I indicated, there are 3 other minor changes that I won't go into. They're really just some language changes in the other sections, and unless you have any questions about those, I would entertain those on the 3 that I reviewed with you.
Commissioner Watson.
Mr. Chair, I do want to point out that a sailing vessel that's racing in a sanctioned yacht club race is out of bounds and automatically disqualified inside of those swim buoys. So if that issue or that incident that you referred to was during a sanctioned race on Wednesday night, undoubtedly that yacht was severely punished. But I do have a couple of questions. One is how does this affect the launching and beaching of catamarans off of Ledbetter Beach, in as much as we are leasing them space to park on the beach?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Watson, a very good question and one which we discussed. It would affect them directly. Most of the cats are, what would it be, east of the swim buoys where they're placed on the beach. So their entry point out to the ocean will be easterly of where the swim buoys are placed, and they would, just as any other sailing vessel, be prohibited from cruising through the swim buoy area. We don't think it'll be problematic. It'll be new for them, so we will have to obviously warn them and give them the information, educate them of this change.
But they do have launching privileges on the beach that they're moored upon or stored upon.
Correct, and we believe they have adequate room to basically have that enter and exit point off of the beach without affecting the swim buoy area.
Okay, so that same thing applies then to the yacht club frontage?
Yeah, that area would be available to them. As you know, many of the cats kind of encroach along where the yacht club parking lot area is and the boat storage area, and that area is easterly of the swim buoys.
Right, so that from that point to the breakwater then is free, open water?
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Owen.
Okay. Thank you. About the slip assignment policy, or the appeals, under slip assignment, sounds like the change is actually going to provide an extra opportunity for the public to appeal a termination. Basically, they can bring it to you for reconsideration before it ever came to the Harbor Commission. So that's actually good from the perspective of somebody who gets their slip terminated. What I didn't quite get from the report or your what you said. What was it? Why did you feel it was necessary to put it back in? And I have some other questions too.
I guess what I'm going to say, and I'm going to be embarrassed to say it, is that I don't think I was paying as close of attention when it was removed as I probably should have been. I do agree that 99% of the time I am consulted by Scott, Kathy, whoever it may be that is involved in the termination process. As you know, we make every effort to contact that individual before that termination letter goes out. It's not something that we look forward to, and it's not the fight that we want to have. So 99% of the time, it's going to be difficult for that individual to provide me with any information that will undo that termination letter or process. However, there are on occasion, and there have been on occasion in the past, when it was in the municipal code, that people have presented information that I felt, okay, it's probably not the time to pull that trigger and do the termination notice. So I think the reason it went out was the city attorney's office, together with Mick and staff, saying this is a step that's probably not necessary. And I think when I took a closer look at it, I said, no, I think it's a step that is appropriate. Now, as Mick pointed out, but it could be abused. And I said, yes, it could be. I said, but I have to rely on my role and responsibility as a waterfront director. This would not be abused 99% of the time. I think it would only be used in that very rare occasion when information is brought forward.
Yeah, we'd rely on your judgment to prevent any abuse from happening.
And my judgment, I guess, relative to the fact it should be terminated at the same time.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's a good thing to have. I mean, why not? You know, people still have the opportunity to appeal it, even if you don't provide the waiver. Looking at these changes, most of which are pretty minor and straightforward, that one in particular kind of caught my attention because I thought, well, it slipped by me too. I don't know our own municipal code. The municipal code is really the most important document that guides how we all behave, how the waterfront department interacts with the public, and how we do as a harbor commission. So I guess I'm wondering, is there any value when these proposed changes come up if we have a harbor commissioner meet with the waterfront staff maybe twice? This is how I would foresee it, to discuss possible changes, anything that the Harbor Commission thinks are important or anything that we see that could be changed that might actually affect how we do our job, and then look at it one more time before it comes to the Harbor Commission. So basically I'm proposing a committee to look at this, because these are kind of fundamental. Some things are a little less so, and maybe most of the time they're not they're going to be just language or something. What's your thoughts on that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Owen, I guess I'm not opposed to a committee to work with staff on this. I think we would do very similar to what we've done here tonight, but if you're looking at a second review or two reviews, I'm not opposed to that. I can't imagine, unless the Commission wants to, it's hard to know what the proposed changes to the municipal code should be or need to be until you kind of work through them on a daily basis. That's when all of a sudden we go to the municipal code, we read what it says, and then we look at what we're doing and we go, that doesn't actually read the way it is in pattern or practice. And that's when we suggest the changes. So what I would envision, if that's the case and if the Commission wants to do that, is staff would do what we're doing, then we would have a committee meeting, we would sit down with you, we would explain it, what we're proposing to change, why we're changing it, and then you would have an earlier review than you're getting tonight, and then we would bring it to the full Commission, and I'm not opposed to that.
Just to follow up, I think what the Harbor Commission can bring to that is practical and experience and expertise in certain areas. What Charlie just brought up about swim areas. Perhaps myself or Betsy would have something to say about slip appeals. Sure. We've been on both sides of an issue there, as an example. Anyway, not to make a lot of extra work, but maybe we could provide some good perspective.
Commissioner Kramer, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
I have two questions. I have a comment. One, I think it would be a good idea for there to be a committee to discuss beforehand. These changes of quite, well, relatively minor, although the waiver is not in some possibilities. But last year there were a series of changes, for instance, that might have been very good for the Harbor Commission to have discussed beforehand, to have maybe understood better, speaking for myself. I have a question about the swim area. It seems to me a very good idea to prevent boats, but are you going to have to be asked each time if somebody is overseeing this, given it's your discretion, maybe some allowing 8-foot seashells to launch might be a better kind of thing than saying it's discretionary with you? And who's going to oversee it? What are the penalties and so forth? I mean, if you have a rule, what happens if you break it?
Well, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, the change would be for enforcement no different than it is today, other than the fact it's a sailing vessel versus a motor vessel. All vessels, for the most part, are going to be prohibited, and the Harbor Patrol enforces that.
Well, except somebody can launch a seashell from the beach, or a kayak with a sail, for instance, whereas a motorboat's a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, we're not going to move down to kayaks. We're not going to move down to outriggers. We're talking about vessels. We did do a statewide search to all the other harbor operations and checked what their language is, and they kind of took a very stiff stance and said a vessel's a vessel, and anything that's in there that's not a swimmer shouldn't be. We didn't feel quite the need to go that far. Relative to an individual by individual case, no. We'll work with the seashell groups to create an understanding of what we're going to allow off of West Beach, which is the only area that this would apply. And Harbor Patrol, again, would be the enforcement mechanism. We have some swimmers off of West Beach, but it's not as active of swimming area as East Beach or Ledbetter. So I think the incidences are less. So I think we feel comfortable with what we're proposing. If Patrol obviously thinks your example of a kayak with a sail on it is a vessel, then I think they're going to warn the individual, say that, you know, you shouldn't be in the swim, you shouldn't enter from the beach, you shouldn't come from the ocean into that area, and hopefully that enforcement will just say you can't be here because the municipal code says no vessel. I don't know what a kayak is with a sail on it, to be honest with you. Is that a vessel or isn't it? We'll have to kind of describe that. And I think if we think it's a hazard to a swimmer, then it's something that we're going to ask people to comply with.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Watson.
Yeah, Commissioner Kelly. John, I think that, commissioners, I think that both of these issues that we're talking about, the sailing vessels, access in the swim area, and the termination of slips, give staff more discretion in handling these issues. But in the end, we have review of those decisions. And so for those reasons, I feel comfortable with the changes that are proposed. And also, I would feel it's probably not necessary for a committee to be involved in the administrative decisions that are made at staff level when we ultimately have oversight. So anyway, those are my comments with regard to those two issues.
Thank you, Commissioner Watson. Commissioner Anakuchin.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bradley, could you elaborate a little bit what the impoundment procedure is? Because I'm not getting a good picture of what's entailed there. Apparently you move the boat someplace from other than where this person had parked it. How does that work?
It can be a combination of items. It can be we move it and put it at the accommodations dock, which is right in front of the Harbor Patrol offices, and then we lock it down, so to speak. And we can do that with a combination of things. We can lock the main hatch or the vessel with our own lock so they have no access into it. We'll go so far as to even take what would be called a bicycle lock, which is a cable, and literally secure it to the dock in some form or fashion so that it gets their attention that the vessel can't leave. And those are the typical type of impoundment mechanism. We could do that in the slip if we didn't feel comfortable in moving the vessel closer to the patrol offices. But most times it involves bringing it to the accommodations dock and then impounding it at that location.
So it's left in the water no matter how this is proceeding. You're not dragging it out to some...
No, we are not.
Okay. Thank you.
I just have a little comment, and I think, John, your description of how staff is handling this, which is we have the municipal code, which is a supposition of how something is supposed to work, and then there's the actual everyday application of that code, and what you're attempting to do is bring reality into the code when we find that there's a little point that needs to be smoothed off or a little divot that needs a little putty in it. And I'm completely fine with that procedure because that's the way the document works. And so I appreciate the effort that you folks are putting into this.
Like I say, it's kind of a combination of both. Sometimes there are changes, meaning wholesale changes in the municipal code that we need to insert language or create language. Most of the time, it's refining language to make it better, I think, in most cases. The best examples, prohibiting sailing vessels in swim areas. Vessels are vessels. They probably should, it should be clear that it's both. And again, I'm not opposed to the committee. If the commission wants to make that recommendation this evening, they can do that. As you know, we will next month do that very thing, in that typically at our July meeting, we do the chair, vice chair, we go through the committee list, and if people want to get off one committee and on another or whatever, then that would be a time to review the committee list. Sometimes we have committees that are no longer functioning, and we can eliminate one and create a new one. So it's kind of up to the commission.
Okay. Thank you, John. Commissioner Anakuchi.
Mr. Chair, are we required or requested to make a motion here regarding?
Yes, we are, but we have another motion that popped up before that, which was, if I'm not mistaken, Commissioner Owen wanted to put a motion forward, did put a motion forward.
No, I didn't.
You didn't?
No,
Okay.
I actually was just exploring the concept, and this doesn't have to be, I wasn't really recommending a standing committee, because there isn't a large amount of business that has to happen every year regarding this. I don't want to also have a knee-jerk reaction against a committee, like it's big government or something, because we actually have something to offer as a Harbor Commission, and it's usually when we get involved, good things result from that. So at least I'd like to think so anyway. So I guess, John, then my point of view as you're bringing this up in your director's report the month before or 2 months before as a possible item that'll be coming up, or as you folks start to enter your work, maybe if you could just let the Harbor Commission know, and at the time, especially if we know what it's going to involve, then we can decide whether it's appropriate for us to get involved beforehand.
That would work. Like I say, it's typically about the same time every year. We kind of wait the whole fiscal year, and staff makes little notes of things they'd like to consider changing or tweaking. And then Mick starts the process with the city attorney's office to identify the list and begins language exchange back and forth. So as we begin that exchange, begin that process, we could certainly alert the commission. If there are commissioners that want to then get in and get an early look at what we're considering, we certainly can do that before we're here tonight. Sure.
Commissioner Crane.
Okay. I was, I think.
Go ahead, Will.
Presentation. I was prepared to recommend a motion that we do, in fact, recommend to the City Council that this ordinance modification be adopted.
Second.
Is there further discussion?
The only discussion would be, I think that would be great if we were notified beforehand to have input if we wanted.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. So we're into commission staff communications.
Mr. Chair, I really don't have anything other than, again, schedule. The July meeting will be held as we discussed. The one thing I probably would begin to ask, I know there's a couple of commissioners that have talked about vacation schedules. I have a vacation scheduled, I believe, the same week as the Harbor Commission meeting in August. So by next month, we'll take a look at that schedule and, if appropriate, determine whether we have a need, meaning what the tentative agenda list is for the August meeting, and if not, it is a candidate for possibly canceling, and our we'll review that with the commissioner. So we'll be thinking about that for next month.
Whoops. All right. Any commission communication to staff? Then is there?
Other than thanks, staff.
Thank you, staff. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So adjourn? I mean, so.
Go,
No,
Charlie. We know what he wants.
Wrong terminology. I so moved.
I'll second that. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.